Guardians, Rite of the Nine is here, and with it comes contest mode, updated weapon perks, and new emblems. Today we're covering 5 Warlock builds that will help you get those contest clears, and more importantly, those shiny weapons. These builds will specialize at either being really strong in the ad clearing department so that you can beat those timers, or they will be the best DPS options to help melt those bosses. Let's jump right on into it. Now, before we get into it, there are a few common things that we need to talk about. First, not swap is active in contest or ultimatum mode, meaning that if you swap your exotic, it will drain all of your ability energy. Now, you can bypass this by swapping class exotics with different perks, or by rallying to a flag at the start of an encounter. But I made all of these builds strong enough to bypass the need for hot swapping. And second, we have to mention weapons, since most can be carried over from build to build. In most of these boss encounters, you'll want to take Queenbreaker and a Divinity. It's one of the highest DPS, especially for its ease of use. We will have a few bosses like Ektar and Phalanx Echo that will be close range, and you still can opt for Lord of Wolves. It did get a nerf, but it's still putting out some good damage. And in those ad clearing encounters, a machine gun for ad clearing or a sword with eager edge will be the best option to help finish those objectives quicker. The first build on our list is a fantastic ad clearing build. This prismatic Warlock build uses Lightning Surge paired with Spirit of Synthoceps to quickly wipe out groups of enemies. Ideally, you'd want the class exotic with Spirit of Immoslight and Synthoceps to quickly rotate between all of your abilities. We take Lightning Surge so that we can slide, then activate our melee to warp forward, calling down lightning, damaging, and jolting enemies. When paired with Spirit of Synthoceps, this means you can activate this into a group of enemies and immediately proc your damage buff to quickly wipe them out. We then make sure to bring the Arcane Needle melee so that we can have 3 charges of Lightning Surge to use. And we of course pair this with the aspect Feed the Void, so that getting any ability kill will proc an enhanced version of Devour. With this enhanced version, we'll get 200 hit points on kills and restore 15 to 40% grenade energy. This helps us to stay alive while using our Lightning Surge. I then love to bring Facet of Purpose paired with Song of Flame, so that whenever we pick up an orb, we gain restoration for 5 seconds. And this pairs perfectly with the heavy-handed mod on our gauntlets. That way you can create an orb every time you're getting those Lightning Surge kills, and you can immediately keep healing afterwards. And of course, Song of Flame is one of the best ad clearing supers since it has incredible survivability and damage. When it comes to stats, I shoot for 100 in resilience and then as much strength and discipline as possible. For weapons, since this is an ad clearing build, we want a sword with eager edge for movement. I love bringing something like Lost Signal in the primary slot, so you can quickly build up your Darkness Transcendent meter. Then in the energy slot, something like Lord of Wolves or Choir of One is really strong for melting mini bosses. But if you don't want to have to worry about ammo, then Sunshot is a really good backup option. As for the artifacts, we do have a couple we want to bring. Flashover is still pretty strong since your Lightning Surge will give you Bolt Charge. Then we can bring Dielectric to gain more stacks of Bolt Charge. Then I love to bring Disruptor Spike and Photonic Flare. Since our Lightning Surge will also jolt enemies, this means those enemies will output less damage, and when defeated by arc damage, they'll create a blinding burst to give you a bit more safety. And what's the flow for the build? Well, you want to start by getting an ability kill to proc your Devour, then run around spamming those Lightning Surges on groups of enemies. In the meantime, don't forget to keep using your Lost Signal to quickly build up your Transcendence. When you come across a mini boss, pull out your Lord of Wolves or Choir of One to quickly melt them. And if you ever get in a sticky situation, pop your super for safety. As for what encounters this build's good for Spire of Watcher, it would be really strong in the first encounter. For Ghost of the Deeps, this will be really strong in the opening encounter. And for Prophecy, it'll be really strong for those middle 2 ad clearing encounters. The next build on the list is one that has quickly become one of my favorite Warlock builds. Hopping over to Arc Warlock, we're building into the exotic legs Geomag Stabilizers. With this exotic, the Chaos Reach super will refund itself while dealing damage, capping out at over double the duration. The other huge part of this exotic is that Ionic Traces now grant 7% Chaos Reach energy. With this in mind, we aim to create as many Ionic Traces as possible. One of the main ways to create Ionic Traces comes from the aspect Electrostatic Mind. Now, killing enemies with arc abilities or enemies affected by an arc debuff will spawn an Ionic Trace. I then double up and bring the aspect Spark of Ion so that every 10 seconds we can get a jolted kill or a kill with Bolt Charge to create another Ionic Trace. But I don't stop there. We then bring Spark of Discharge so that arc weapon kills will progress a counter towards creating an Ionic Trace. But this also makes it so that collecting Ionic Traces will now give you stacks of Bolt Charge. So now basically anything that we do will create create an Ionic Trace, if not multiple, and that leads to a ton of super energy, but we want to capitalize on this even further. So we bring Spark of Frequency, so that every time we collect an Ionic Trace, we now get 2 stacks of Bolt Charge instead of 1. And to top it all off, you can bring the exotic fusion, Delicate Tomb. With this fusion, every time we create an Ionic Trace, the next shot will deal double damage and it'll jolt an enemy, meaning that we'll not only deal a ton of burst damage, but we can also create up to 4 Ionic Traces from 1 kill, since Delicate Tomb also has a chance to create an Ionic Trace intrinsically. And what's the flow for this build? Well, the incredible thing about this build is how easy it is to get going. Throw a grenade or a melee to get a kill and spawn your first Ionic Trace. After collecting it, you're now amplified, taking less damage, and enemies will be less likely to shoot you. Plus, this will mean even more damage for your melee and Delicate Tomb. Each of these Ionic Traces will give back a ton of ability energy, a ton of super energy, and power up your Delicate Tomb. Plus, it'll give stacks of Bolt Charge. And while all of this happens, your Chaos Reach will be recharging at an insanely rapid rate, meaning you can use it to freely wipe out a ton of enemies, take down a mini boss, or even deal some decent boss DPS. When it comes to stats, I like to shoot for 100 in resilience. Then I aim for as much discipline as possible while keeping a decent amount of recovery. As for weapons, Delicate Tomb is one of the best options for its ability to create Ionic Traces and its sheer power, though you could still opt for a strong Arc primary paired with a strong Arc heavy to deal good damage against mini bosses. As for the artifact, the main perk you want to bring is Flashover, amping up your Bolt Charge damage by 150%. Defibrillating Blast is also really strong, so that every time you unleash your Bolt Charge, you get a bump of health. And don't forget to take Limit Break, which will give your Chaos Reach another 30% damage while you're amplified. So when it comes to encounters that this build is good for, it's all of those ad clearing encounters. For Spire the Watcher, it's the first encounter, and even the second encounter. For Ghost of the Deep, it'll be really strong in that opening encounter. And for Prophecy, it's really strong for those middle 2 encounters. And if you're enjoying the video, leaving a like and subscribing would be much appreciated. Alright, let's get right back to it. The next build on the list is one of the strongest builds for boss phases. With the exotic helmet, Speaker Sight, you can create a healing turret that will send out healing seekers every 3 seconds to any allies that need healing, giving you cure and restoration. Now we have a way to constantly heal us and our team. The really cool thing is that you can bring Touch of Flame, and this amps up that restoration to restoration times 2. Then you can bring a support frame auto rifle to not only deal more DPS, but when you apply that restoration by healing a teammate, it will extend your restoration times 2 instead of just giving restoration times 1. And we amp this up even further by bringing Ember of Benevolence, so that every time we heal a teammate, we get 6 seconds of 400% increased ability regeneration. This means we get back our healing grenade before the turret even runs out, so we can immediately throw down another one. And then I'd love to bring the Aspect Helion, so that we can output even more passive damage, and it'll give us a way to stun unstoppable champions. For stats, I like to shoot for 100 in resilience, discipline, and recovery, with resilience and discipline being the highest priorities. For weapons, you do have plenty of options to work with. I mainly like to bring the healing auto for its ease of use, continuous healing, and its ability to proc Ember of Benevolence. But alternatively, you could rock something like Lumina. And for that heavy slot, just bring whichever heavy weapon matches the boss that you're facing. As for the artifact, the main option we want to bring is Limit Break. That way, when you place down your well, when you have Radiant or Restoration, you can deal an extra 30% weapon damage for 8 seconds. And that's because it converts your weapon damage to super damage, giving it that buff. And what's the flow for this build? Well, throw down a turret near where you and your allies might post up. As you heal your teammates, your abilities will rapidly come back. When it comes time to move, simply pop a rift on a teammate or proc healing from a weapon. Weapons like Heal Clip or the support frame auto rifle are best for keeping up that Ember of Benevolence buff. And repeat the process whenever you come to a new location. And the encounters that it'll be good at, well, it's any boss phase encounters, and honestly even some of the ad clearing sections for its pure survivability. What I love about this next build is that it boasts as both an ad clearing machine and a DPS monster. This build uses the exotic gauntlets, Getaway Artist, to consume your grenade and create an Arc Soul. When you bring the Prismatic subclass paired with the aspect Bleak Watcher, you now create both an Arc Buddy and a Stasis turret by consuming your grenade. And this now gives you 2 ways of passively dealing more damage. This becomes even stronger when we pair it with the aspect Feed the Void. When getting an ability kill, we gain an enhanced version of Devour, and this Devour will feed back a ton of health on kills, but it'll also give you a ton of grenade energy to be able to keep spamming those turrets. Then I like to bring the fragment Facet of Ruin. That way, all the shadow scatter damage from our turrets will have increased size and damage. This also pairs perfectly with Facet of Command, so that whenever our turrets freeze enemies, our equipped weapon will be reloaded. I then love to bring the Nova Bomb Super for DPS on bosses and mini bosses, but this also pairs really nicely with Facet of Purpose. That way, whenever we pick up an orb, we gain a Void Overshield for more health and damage resistance. For stats, I like to shoot for 100 in Resilience and Discipline. Then I like to go for a mix of Strength and Recovery. As for those weapons, one of my favorite loadouts is a strong kinetic primary paired with Microcosm. This will be really strong in Ghost of the Deep, since you can easily melt through those boss shields, and you still get good DPS with your super. For the artifact, Limit Break is always the best option for more super DPS. You can easily proc it by picking up an orb that's created by a teammate super, which will give you that Void Overshield. You can then, of course, bring Harsh Refraction, which will give Microcosm another 20% damage. Remember, your turret will continuously slow and freeze the boss, and in the off chance your turret can't reach the boss, just use a powered melee to unravel them. And what's the flow for this build? Well, like with most other prismatic Warlock builds, you'll want to get an ability kill to start off. That way you can proc Devour for more health and grenade energy on kills. Then keep consuming those grenades to create turrets and arc buddies. In boss phases, make sure to pick up an orb. Then pop your super for a ton of damage. This then boosts Microcosm and really melts those bosses. And where does this build excel? Well, this is going to be my main build for Ghost of the Deep for its incredible ability to melt bosses with shields and deal damage, though it's a solid build for literally any of the other dungeons. And for the last build, I went for pure DPS. To do that, we're bringing the exotic chess piece, Sanguine Alchemy. With this exotic, whenever we're standing in a Well of Radiance or a Rift, we get ×4 super element matching weapon surge. This is already higher than most builds can achieve. However, this also makes it so that while in a rift, dealing damage to an enemy will mark them, allowing you to deal an additional 10% damage that stacks with everything else. So for this build, I landed back on the Solar subclass so that we have a ton of survivability and a Well of Radiance. I like to opt for the Healing Grenade paired with Touch of Flame so that I can instantly gain a burst of health and restoration ×2. You can then keep this up by using your solar weapons to kill, because it's paired with Ember of Empyrean. But the best part is that you can simply pop a rift to gain some passive healing and a ton of damage for your solar weapons. Then while killing, you gain 5 seconds of blood magic, which pauses the rift timer, meaning that you could theoretically infinitely keep up one rift just by killing enemies while standing in it. I then opt for Ember of Benevolence so that I can heal teammates to proc that 400% ability regeneration. This is really nice for getting back those healing grenades and rifts. And since this is a DPS build, I'm opting for the aspect Helion to create a solar buddy whenever we pop our rift. That way we have more passive damage on the boss. For stats, I shoot for 100 in Resilience. Then I aim for about 100 discipline while keeping your recovery at least 60 to 70. As for the weapons, I really like Lord of Wolves, since it will burst through a ton of enemies and melt those close range bosses. Alternatively, you can bring the healing auto to consistently proc Ember of Benevolence and bring your strongest heavy weapon like Queenbreaker. And in a moment, we'll touch on how you can activate that weapon surge for other element heavies. As for the artifact, the most important is Limit Break. Since your weapon damage will convert to super damage, you'll get another 30% stacking damage for the first 8 seconds of your well. But keep in mind that you need either Radiant or Restoration active. Make sure to throw down your healing grenade so that you do have it active. And what's the flow for this build? Well, in normal play, you want to keep throwing those healing grenades and popping those rifts. Anytime a teammate is affected by one of these, you'll get that increased ability regen. Then keep standing in your rift and melting enemies. For DPS phases, I like to throw a healing grenade before anything to make sure I proc Limit Break. Then pop your well and go to town with your solar heavy. Though if you do opt for a different element heavy, you can pop your well and then quickly swap to a subclass that matches that weapon to gain that ×4 weapon surge. Now this will drain all of your abilities, so it's a little bit sketchy when coming out of DPS phases since you will have to swap back to solar. And this build excels at all of those boss encounters since you'll be dealing some of the highest damage in the game, especially the final encounter of Spire of Watcher, since 1000 Voices is doing a ton of damage, which is a solar heavy. And there you have it, Guardians. We've covered 5 Warlock builds that help you get those ultimatum clears for Rite of the Nine. But remember, mastering these builds is only the beginning. Experiment with different combinations and tweak your loadout to suit your playstyle. If you found this video helpful or just enjoyed seeing a new perspective, feel free to like the video and comment down below on what you'll be running for Rite of the Nine. Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Lucky Mech, signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.